All right, so here I am. It's been a little while. I didn't make it on last night. I wanted to. I was just dead tired. I'm not really sure why. I've been doing a lot of surfing, and it can be where I live and where I surf. It can be a very athletic experience. So sometimes I just need to rest, and I am 54, so my body maybe needs a little more rest than it used to after exerting itself like that, but what are you going to do? Life could be a hell of a lot worse. So here I am. We are talking about how to survive the Aquarian Ascension. So, when I was born in the 60s and I was growing up in the 70s, and there was that very famous song, maybe you've heard of it, The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, blah, 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 blah. Harmony and understanding, truth and love, and everybody loves each other. And it was very hippie-ish. It was like, hey, man, let's just all get together and love each other, man. We hadn't actually entered into the Aquarian Age. And I'm not sure, depending on who you talk to, maybe we haven't officially entered into the Age of Aquarius yet. But we have certainly made the shift. And the shift has been coming for a while. And so it's just like, whenever you're changing seasons, the other season starts to, show up, and it'll drop off some bags and come back and, bring some furniture. And, maybe it hasn't moved in yet, but you're starting to feel it. You're starting to feel like, when winter starts to come, you start to feel the change. So we're feeling this change. We're moving from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. And I would just go so far as to say that we have begun entering it, if we haven't already entered it. We have definitely entered a shift, a massive shift, a shift that has completely changed. I mean, you can't go back. The door has closed on the old way of doing things. And so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the difference between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius. And we're going to be talking about what this Aquarian shift is and what you need to know. The idea of, oh, how cool, we're going to enter into this utopian shift of Aquarius. Well, whenever you make a shift, there's a dynamic change. And so we are changing fundamentally, and that change can be very challenging. And I am seeing this more and more, that there are people who are really coming apart at the seams. And, this is one of the things I've always done when people come to train with me. When people used to come and train with me in the spirit fighting martial arts, I would sit them down and I would say, here's what you can expect. And I would tell them all of the tremendous changes that were going to happen, and what was going to be very challenging for them, and they had to know going into it. And are you ready for this? And almost always everybody would say, oh yes, I'm ready. I've been working on myself, and I'm very conscious, and I'm very aware. And sure enough, as soon as I start teaching them this stuff, their whole world starts coming apart. And it's this experience of all of your unconscious fears and blocks and insecurities all come to the surface. And so this is what's happening now, because we are making a shift. So before we talk about where we're going, let's talk about where we've been. So as you know, we are in the age of Pisces. And if you know anything about Pisces, Pisces is the fish. In fact, the word fish and Pisces are the same. Pisces is an anglicized pronunciation of the Latin, which is piscis, pisc. You do that with a Germanic accent. The P becomes an F, the SC becomes an SH, and piscis becomes fish. It's the same word. So we live in the age of the fish. Now that sounds wonderful, but what religion do you know that uses the sign of the fish as its its mascot, Christianity. This did not happen by chance. I don't believe it was done intentionally. I don't believe that the founding, when Christianity was coming together, it was a sign that people used in Rome where they were oppressed, and they would use the sign of the fish to say this is a safe place for Christians. This happened because Christianity showed up exactly at the time of the Age of Pisces. Exactly. So there's no mystery there. The Age of Pisces is the age of Christianity. And so let's look at what happened when the Age of Pisces occurred, which was 2,000 years ago. We have the term AD and we have the term BC, which means before Christ, and after death, which means the time of Christ. And we have our years. This is 2018. So this is 2018 years since, supposedly, the birth of Jesus. But what it really says is it's been 2018 years since the beginning of the Age of Pisces. And so what happened then? What happened is that just as you're coming into the Age of Pisces, you have this age of empires that has swept over the world. And there has been massive shifts in technology, where you have had, up until that time, you've had people living in tribal units. They've been living in small villages. There's no such thing as giant countries. Even if people are speaking the same language, for instance, in Northern Europe, there was large Celtic areas, of Celtic tribal areas. There was Germanic tribal areas where people spoke various dialects of the Germanic language, but there wasn't any unified culture. In fact, all of these cultures would fight amongst each other. And here you come along with first the Age of Greece, the golden age of Greece. And we'll talk about this. I'm going to come back to this because this is really important. You have no idea how much of your idea of history is based on somebody else's culture altogether, which has nothing to do with your ancestral culture, assuming that you are of Northern European descent. You might not be, but assuming that you are. But first we have the rise of the Greek Empire, and of course we have the Persian Empire. We have all kinds of stuff going on all the way over in China. But in terms of Western society, we've got the Greek Empire, we've got the Persian Empire, we have then the Roman Empire, which comes out of that. And the Roman Empire is the empire that dominates all the other empires in Europe and the Near East. And it is through the Roman empirical machine through which Christianity arises and flourishes and is spread across the world. In fact, it is what the Roman Empire uses to expand its empire. We could even say today that the Western world is in fact still the Roman Empire. One really interesting thing about it is that the demarcation line in what was once Eastern and Western Germany, that demarcation line is where Rome stopped. And when you go north of that, you have communism. You have south of that, and you have capitalism. And that is a direct result of the mindset that happened during all of that. Anyway, that's a whole other subject we could get into, but that's another very interesting thing. So what else happens? So you have this rise of the Roman Empire, you have this rise of Christianity, and then what happens when Christianity starts to take hold is that we go into what is called the Dark Ages. And that is when the very sophisticated Roman Empire falls apart. Now, it still exists, but it is nothing like it was. In fact, there are all kinds of technology that the Roman Empire had that we don't have today. We still are trying to figure out how they, were so successful with their aqueducts and the buildings that they, they were able to do all kinds of really amazing things technologically that, of course, we lost during the Dark Ages. This is part of the Age of Pisces. This is what the Age of Pisces brought. It brought serfdom, where you have elite rich people who live in castles, and then you have everybody else who lives in the fields, and they literally use their own feces to grow crops, and they have to boil, like if they want to eat vegetables, they have to pick their vegetables and they have to boil them. That's why you hear about them eating this slop. It's because they had to boil all of their food because it was full of their own crap, literally. People lived in it. And then you had all kinds of disease, and you have torture, you have mayhem. And what you have is the elites and everybody else. You have the 2%, and then you have the masses. Now, there might have been a small merchant class, but they really weren't, they weren't nearly as powerful as the elites. And you have kings. You have things that happen in Europe that had never happened before. The idea of, in Germanic culture, the idea of a king who rules over large, big kingdom is totally new, brand new. What you had before that is you had tribal communities, and you might have had a chieftain, a König. They might have called him a king, a König, but it didn't have the same meaning. So, and then you have the rule of the one, as opposed to the more democratic rule of the many, which is what you had before the Age of Pisces. You have disease, the spread of the plague. You have all kinds of these horrible things happening. And you have the rise of mass slavery on levels we've never seen before. And we go into the age of the Reformation and the age of Enlightenment. And then you see the spread of slavery into other parts of the world. But this is the Age of Pisces. The Age of Pisces was the age of those who had power and those who didn't. And if you wanted to survive in the Age of Pisces, what you needed to do was get stuff. You needed to get power. And with your power, you had to dominate others. Maybe you had to even conquer other people and take their stuff. And then you would have, there's a reason why they had castles. You have to build these castles to protect yourself, and you have to hold all your stuff there. And then you build city walls, and you put your people inside these giant city walls, and breeds all kind of disease and all that. This is the Age of Pisces. You have to have your stuff. Now, this has, when I grew up, that was pretty much the mentality you had, even though, we lived in the United States and it was a democracy and all that. You work hard and you become something. What you did is that you went to school, and then you either went to college or some kind of trade school, and you got some kind of a degree in something. And with that degree, or with that certification, you then went off and worked for somebody, sometimes for 40 years. And if you could get someplace where you could work steadily for 40 years, that's what everybody worked for. They worked for that retirement pension. So they worked their asses off until they were at least 55, and then they would retire, and by then they would be a wreck because they'd been working, at least 40 hours a week, for their entire lives without any, anything. And everything was about having stuff. You bought a car and you held onto the car for 10 years and you constantly fixed this car as it was falling apart, and you got rid of it when it was finally, it wouldn't drive anymore. And then you bought another car, as opposed to now where you lease. You just lease. Lease it for 3 years and turn over and buy another one and lease again. You bought a home. You saved up a bunch of money, and then you put it into this home, and then you paid off the mortgage. And again, hopefully by the time you've retired, you've paid off your house and you can finally live in it. But again, you're too old and you're too sick to enjoy it because you've just been beat to hell. That's where my parents grew up. And I wanted to be an actor when I was younger. First, I wanted to be an evangelist, and I went to Bible school. Studied the Bible in Greek and Latin, and I used to, when Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses would come to my door and try and convert me, I'd say, hang on a sec, and I'd go get my Greek New Testament, because both of those guys would love to say, in the original Greek, this is what it means, and I'd say, here's my Greek New Testament, can you show me where that is? And they'd look at it and they'd have no idea what I was talking about. They couldn't read Greek. And I'd say, here, let me show you what a passage actually says. So I did that, and then I wanted to be an actor. And my dad, very, very successful physicist, very successful scientist, you know, he did okay financially. He would say to me, listen, you know, if you want to do that, fine, but you should have something else on the side. You should have some other, you know, whatever it was. You should have some other degree on the side so that, you know, in case you can get, because that was the mindset. The mindset was, it was all about how much money you made and how much security you had, and you had to protect yourself. You had to surround yourself with this stuff, these possessions and money and savings and all of that in order to protect yourself, because that was how things were done in the age of Pisces. It's interesting because I'm thinking about Christianity, and the whole idea of Christianity is to be saved. You know, and it's sort of that same kind of thing. It's just like that safety. You just need that safety thing because you never know. And, you know, the world is out to get you. So you might as well just, you know, pray this sinner's prayer and just accept Jesus. And, you know, you can sin if you have to, but, you know, at least you'll be saved. Same kind of thing. The Piscean mindset. Really fear-based mindset. Now, the ideal Piscean mindset would have been one of personal sacrifice. And this is what the mythology of Jesus was supposed to represent, which of course it never did. I believe it was hijacked and taken over and used for the benefit of those in power in order to keep other people disempowered and all that. But the original idea of the Jupiterian, because that's Jesus is Jupiter, the idea of the Jupiterian savior was somebody who gave spiritually. Jupiter is a very giving planet, very giving, very generous planet, and so this was the idea. Of course, it never really turned into that. So, idea, if you get the bottom line here, is I'm saying that the age of Pisces was a really crappy time to live if you were not one of the elite. That is why, by the way, there is this huge push. Everybody wants to talk about the Illuminati or the elite. It's become, you know, the name du jour. The elite, the top 2%. Doesn't matter which side you're on, whether you're on the far right or the far left, you are attacking all the people in power. You don't trust anybody. And that's where this is coming from. It's because we're shifting out of that. So even though it's true that we can now say that we are moving into an age where the elite are not going to be controlling the masses anymore, you know, we need to evolve out of the fear-based ideas where you're either, you know, on the far right or the far left. I won't attack anybody because I'm sure I've got both sides on there. So let's now talk about what the Age of Aquarius is. So the Age of Aquarius says harmony, love, understanding, all of those good things. We have this picture of the water bearer. And the water that the water bearer is bringing is the nurturing resources of the universe for the masses. So you can see the water is just spreading out everywhere. And this means that it is true. What is going to happen is that the elites are going to lose their control of the masses. What I'm doing right now is a perfect example. Without spending a dime, except for what it costs to, you know, connect to the internet, which is, you know, relatively quite inexpensive when you think about what the internet gives you. For that, all I have to do is have an internet connection, and I can come onto YouTube. It doesn't cost me a dime to come onto YouTube, and I can talk to the entire world. And in fact, my entire living comes from reaching out to people through this medium. And this is the Aquarian Age. The Aquarian Age says that the masses are going to be able to rise up. And so the equality is everybody is going to have the ability to connect. The whole idea of democracy, even though we can talk about how perfect or imperfect it was, Western democracy is in fact an expression of the Aquarian Age trying to, make itself available. The idea that everybody has a voice and everybody has a vote, and if you work hard enough, you can become something. That is a very Aquarian mindset. And what the Aquarian Age really means is that each individual will be self-reliant and self-sufficient, first and foremost. That is a complete departure from the Age of Pisces. This is one of the reasons I attack victim mentalities. And by the way, one of the things I find personally entertaining but very ironic is that people that you find who are complaining the loudest about wanting freedom, like, I know I may offend some people, but let's talk about the coal miners. They're going to talk about freedom and democracy and all of that, and yet what they want is they want to mandate that some rich person hires them to do work for them in the coal mines. So what they really want is they want to be enslaved. They want somebody to hire them, and they'll tell you this is what we've been doing for generations and these are the only jobs out here. That is not an Aquarian mindset. An Aquarian mindset says, number one, I am self-sufficient within myself. And you look around and you either create where you are with what you have, you create some kind of living, or you say, you know what, there are no jobs here. I'm going to go where there are some jobs. You know what I'm saying? That's an Aquarian mindset. So it's very hypocritical. Maybe a better word is, you're at counter. You're working against yourself if what you want is to mandate that the government give you a job, and at the same time say, I'm all about freedom from government. You got to pick one. You can't have both. So the Aquarian Age is about being self-sufficient within yourself, and at the same time, it is an age of cooperation. So unlike the Age of Pisces, where you had some power telling people what to do, and yeah, the masses worked together, but they're not doing it out of any desire to connect with each other and create some kind of cooperative arrangement. That's what they have to do. Like being in the army. If you're in this and you have to do that, and you take orders from so-and-so, and that kind of thing. But the Age of Aquarius is going to be people who are self-sufficient within themselves, and yet at the same time, they cooperate with others. And the way that the cooperation works is that whatever it is that you do empowers the other person to be self-sufficient within themselves. And so you have this cooperative. This is why bartering has become so popular. And communities of bartering, where people will come together and some guy says, yeah, I build the house, and in exchange for building your house, you're going to give me sheep and food and whatever the heck it is. This idea of bartering is a very Aquarian mindset. And so it's not so much like the tribal hunter-gatherer mindset, which was very isolated. This is, we do live in a global society, like it or not. It's a fact. If you want to rage about globalism, you can do that all you want, but it's not going to change the reality that we live in a global society. I have the ability to flip on my computer, press a button, and talk to anybody in the world for free. It's called Skype. It's a global society. I'm sorry you don't like it, but that's the fact. Having said that, in this global society that we live in, we will be self-sufficient within ourselves. I love working for myself. I don't work for anybody. I only work for me. I create my time. I create my schedule. I am now in the phase where I have to do a lot of expansion because my business has taken off, and I'm booked up all the way through February, completely booked, which is very new for me. And you know, the certification programs that I'm creating are in fact not something I had any intention of doing. I don't like that idea personally. I don't really want to oversee and do all that. But in order to meet the demand and allow my business to grow, I have to spread things out, which means delegating and creating ways for people to learn from me and make money at the same time. So for those of you who are interested in that, all that stuff is in the links when they'll come up. So watch out for that if you're interested. So when it comes to the Aquarian Age, there's something that I've found that in Vedic astrology, which I am really beginning to focus on and enjoy, and it has completely revolutionized me, my finances, and me personally. And that is what's called the Aruda Lagna. And I teach that in the Vedic astrology certification course. But you know, there's a lot of Vedic astrologers who know what the Aruda Lagna are, but a lot of them, in fact, I don't know any who really focus on them. Some of them have more knowledge about them than others, but the more that I look at what this is in somebody's chart, it tells me not only how they are meant to interface with the rest of the world and have this cooperative relationship, but it will also show how they will be self-sufficient within themselves, and it will show at the same time exactly how they can make their mark in the world and be self-sufficient. And so you hear me talk a lot about going after your soul desire. So now let me give you a practical reality of that. It's not only something that works and it feels good and it gets you connected spiritually and all those other good things. It is, the reason why it's so important now is because we are entering this age of Aquarius where you are completely self-sufficient and yet you are cooperating with the community. It's not an either or, it's both. And in order for that to work, you need to know what your avatar is. So it's like your avatar to the rest of the world, and it tells you exactly how. When you are doing your job, you're following your avatar, not only are you self-sufficient within yourself, but you also empower others to be self-sufficient. And all that does is it creates a cascade of more income coming to you and more ability to then tap out and, you know, reach out with the fingers of energy into that whole cooperative community, which is the world, and allow everybody to be at their best. So, and this is, by the way, why I'm so booked up, because that's it. People want a Vedic astrological reading from me. So, we're going to be talking more about this. I will be taking some questions. I'm only going to be on for another hour probably, because I've got a lot of stuff I need to do today. But I will open it up for questions. But before I do that, I'm going to just once again play the little opening here and take note of all of the links. There are some new ones. One of them is I'm now branching out and just doing private session counseling with people. If you want to know what your soul desire is, you want to know, you know, some people don't know what it is that they want in life. They don't know what they're, you know, how they should make a living. I can usually figure out within an hour. Sometimes it might take more sessions, to be honest, but a lot of times within one session I can figure out, or actually I help you figure out what it is that you should do and how to go after it so that you can be successful. There is the Vedic Astrological Certification Program, which I will certify people. There's 2 levels. Right now I'm giving a discount on both levels together. First level is I teach you the basics of my chart that I put together, which is very unique and very focused. And you can then take that and use that for yourself or create your own business. I don't care. You just can't use my name. Second level is I will eventually work with you and certify you and see if you are able to, you know, work underneath my, you know, my name. And then you can have your own portal, and then, you know, I will be promoting this, my astrologers in this business, and that will give you potentially an income if that's something that you want to do. I'm going to be working on certifying people in other areas, which we'll talk about as time goes on. So there's a lot of things coming. A lot of big things coming. In any case, I'll be back in a couple of minutes, and if there are any questions, I will be happy to take them. So stay tuned. Okay, so let's take a look at the questions here. So again, if you're new to my channel, the best way to interact with me is to leave a question. This is for the live Q&A. If this is already archived and you're looking at it after it's been recorded and archived, it doesn't apply to you. You can leave a comment, whatever way you want. But in terms of the Q&A, I only want to respond to the questions. So please write question so that I can see you're asking me a question. Otherwise, I will probably bypass your comment. The least amount of unnecessary comments or communication between you that I have to scroll through, the better for me. Saves us both time. Anyway, but you are free to do whatever you like. All right, so I do see a question from Emerson's Coffee, Bike, and Rum Shop. Question: for those of us on this path that are also in psychotherapy, what are the best ways to make the most of professional help and treatment for depression? Well, I am not a psychotherapist. I am not a psychiatrist. I am very familiar with therapy and 12-step programs. I've been part of those that for many years. So that's why you hear me talking a lot of jargon. But I do come from a shamanic perspective as well. I don't pretend to be, nor do I want to be a psychotherapist. What are the best ways to make most of the professional help? Well, again, not being a doctor, I can't give that kind of information out. What I do want to address is that this shift, what I'm talking about, the shift into the Aquarian Age, this is one of the symptoms that you are actually getting better. That sound what? What did he just say? Being depressed is getting better? How is that possible? Because living in the age of Pisces, in order to survive that, one of the ways to survive that is to go into denial. At least, listen, this is why our parents had ulcers and chronic back pain and all the I could go into a list of all the diseases that people have. This is a result of a survival mechanism of living in the age of Pisces, which is don't listen to what you really want, stuff it all down, and just take your cross and work for 40 hours a week, or be the victim, or be the good Christian, or this is the way we've been living. So depression, if you have the awareness that you are depressed, it means that that your soul is actually going, it's struggling to get air. It is making the effort to heal. So depression, the best way to deal with depression is to feel the feelings. I know that some in the professional psychological realm may want to give you some some kind of chemical to help you with your depression. I can't make a comment on that. It would be irresponsible of me to do that because I'm not capable. But I would really hope that people could experience their feelings before they go that route. So if you are having depression, it means go deep into the sadness. Go deep into the anger and the sadness that is there. That is what professional help is about. That's what counselors are there for. And you should be talking with somebody on a regular basis. I recommend, finding somebody that you trust. Don't just take the first person that comes along, because just because somebody has a degree doesn't mean that they have the slightest clue about their own feelings. Some of the most fucked up people in the universe are psychologists and psychiatrists. 12-step groups are extremely helpful if you're willing to actually do the actual work. But if you're going through that, it means that your psyche is trying to heal. So if somebody's working with me, this is why I can't do this now, because on thunderwizard.com, people can choose to sign up on a monthly basis. And, I really don't want to mess with that, because I don't want to be, it was tough when I had, students that I just dealt with directly. But in the beginning, I used to require that people not leave working with me unless we had decided it. So you can't unilaterally get up and leave. So the other thing that I would recommend is that if you are working with somebody and all this stuff comes up, do not unilaterally walk away from them. If you are working with me, do not unilaterally decide to leave. Talk with me first. Because these crises are when you are about to make major healing. And I've said from the beginning, I have never hidden it. If you work with me, you will come apart at the seams at some point. And it might just be me talking. Some people say, I hear your voice, or I just listened to one of your videos and something, all of a sudden I get upset, or I get afraid, or, I don't know what it is, and they don't know what it is that I'm doing. It's just, I'm a thunder shaman, and I bring transformation with me, and the way to transform is to get honest and to get real. It's another reason why I say stop doing the power plants, because all they do is they're just getting in the way of you really having your feelings, and we live in a society of people who don't know how to be uncomfortable. We have been taught that when we have a negative feeling, an uncomfortable feeling, we have to do something about it. We have to act out on it. And a true shaman doesn't have to do that. So you live in a state where you're not in denial, you're not pushing it down, and you're not acting out on it or taking some chemical in your body or doing something to divert yourself. Which isn't to say you can't have fun. I have a lot of fun in all kinds of different ways. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I can't talk from a professional psychotherapy standpoint about what's best. My experiences, talk with a counselor who actually wants to help you talk about your feelings and get to your unconscious rage, because that's what depression is. It's unconscious rage that has been stuffed down, and your experience is that you're sad. But true clinical depression is you're just sort of like a zombie, and you can't get out of bed and you can't function. It just means that there's all this stuff under the surface that's trying to get into your conscious awareness, and you just haven't been given the permission or the tools to be able to have all your feelings, because it's that simple. Just have all your feelings and be able to verbalize them and feel them. And that's one of the things that I teach. So anyway, I've talked enough about that, so we'll move on. But that was a great question. So let me go back up here. Lady Red, question. Not long ago I was watching the night sky and saw the runes Algiz and Othala quite literally written in the clouds. I get the independent meaning of each, but what do they mean together? Well, it would also help me to know what was going on in your mind beforehand. We don't have to do that now because it would take a long time. This is the kind of stuff I do in rune readings. I should probably come up with a certification for rune readers as well. So I guess I'll have to do that. So Algiz, Elkhaj, the elk rune, looks like this. It represents energy, like the energy of your body. So if it comes up in a rune reading, and then the first thing I think of is somebody's aura. This is why I teach Qigong, energy work. Energy work is different from things like Reiki. Reiki is not energy work. I love Reiki. I appreciate it, but Reiki is not energy work. Any Reiki workers out there doing only Reiki, it's not energy work. Energy work, Qigong, means that you build up energy and fill your own aura with it. So the rune, the Elchaj rune, is a rune of spiritual empowerment on an energy level. It represents the shaman with his arms up, where he's connected to both heaven and earth, and he's empowering the whole village with his connection to heaven and earth. It means spiritual protection. So you have Othala, which means it means the home, it means the earth, it means the physical land you live on, it means your inheritance. Some people wrongfully take and use it for racial exclusivity. It has nothing to do with that, although it can mean somebody's actual inheritance that they own or their family. It could mean your ancestral inheritance, which could be an ethnic thing, like your ethnic spiritual heritage. It could have something to do with that. So if I were to just, without knowing anything else, my first thought is empower yourself in your own roots, in your own home, in your own spiritual heritage, whatever that is for you. Again, I would need to talk to you more to find out. We don't have the time to do that now, but those are the kinds of things I do in rune readings and in the career.thunderwizard.com if you just want that. Or runereadings.thunderwizard.com. You can go there as well. Okay. All right. So so again, I need to see question. So somebody throwing stuff up there, I can't help you if you don't actually ask a question. Doku 007, question. The spirit fighting technique you teach, is there any risk for the user? Also, are there any defensive moves? Yes to both of those questions. It is simultaneously a shamanic practice used that will fill you with energy on the deepest, most intense level I've ever experienced. And it is also at the same time the most lethal martial art I have ever practiced or experienced in my life. And I don't ask me, I don't have any videos, I don't teach it online. The only way I teach it is from teacher to student, and so I take students very rarely, and you'd have to live here and all that kind of stuff, and then you'd have to go through the whole screening process and all that. So the closest thing that you can get online from me that will connect you to the power of the spirit fighting is celestial Qigong. For that, go to qigong.thunderwizard.com, qigong.thunderwizard.com, and that will sort of give you the distillation of the energy. And it is intense and it is transformative, but if you just follow my instructions, you should be very safe. And it will also connect you to ancestral teachers and masters who will empower you as well. So let's see, what else? Rita Max, I need you to put question. I know you have a question there, but I won't see that unless you let me know that, because I almost passed it by. Rita Max, is there a runic combination that I could use to set myself free from guilt, sorrow, and self-hate? To die and be reborn anew, I have deeper personal issues. The answer to that is yes. It would be extremely, extremely, extremely irresponsible of me to just throw runes out for something that deep. So I need to make something clear to you guys. Let's just look at what you just asked me to do. You didn't say, can you give me a rune to make a little more money? Yeah, I can do that. You asked me to give you a runic combination to free you from guilt, sorrow, self-hate. And then you want to be reborn anew because you have deep personal issues. That's like going to CVS and saying, do you have a pill for cancer? Think about what you're asking. I'm not trying to belittle anybody, but this is one of the problems with the New Age spiritual mentality. Give me the pill, make me better now. So to answer your question, I would need to talk to you. If what you say is true, you need to be working with me on probably a weekly basis And I need to be helping you. I'm not going to be able to give you something that's going to fix it. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to go through this process I'm talking about, which is the Aquarian Ascension. You're going to have to be taken apart and go through that pain. You're going to have to let that come to the surface and feel it. You cannot do that alone. You can't. So if you don't want to work with me, you got to find somebody. Got to find somebody you can work with and trust, whether it's a spiritual counselor or a psychologist. I don't care, but think about that. There's just no way that you can get what you're asking. It would be so irresponsible for me to do that. Even if I had the power, I wouldn't do it, because there are things within you you have to grow. You have to learn from. There are things that either you haven't been taught. I'm not judging you. I went through it myself. You haven't been taught. You haven't learned, and or you don't have the tools, or you wouldn't be where you are. You're obviously in a state of a crisis where you're about to actually have what you are asking for. You are in the process of dying and being reborn. It is incredibly painful. And all of your unconscious previous ideas about who you are being torn apart, and it's causing you all this pain. You have been fighting with yourself about who you're supposed to be. I don't know you, but just based on that, I know you've been living to please other people. Either what you think society wants you to be, because society has been trying to hypnotize you into what it is you're supposed to be. Perhaps your parents didn't teach you how to do that. Something along those lines. You need help. You need a counselor. You need a teacher. You need a spiritual teacher. So to answer your question, if that's something that you really want from me, you're going to have to go to thunderwizard.com and start working with me on a regular basis. You can, if you want, have one session with me to see if I can help you. Go to career.thunderwizard.com and book a session with me. Okay? So I'm sorry I couldn't answer your question, but I got to do my job here. My job is to help you, not to pacify you. All right, so let me see if there are any other questions. All right. Looking for the questions again. Not seeing any questions here. All right, so let us continue with the talk. So while I'm on it, let's just keep going on that understanding. We live in a society, especially Western society, it's now becoming the whole world, because the whole world, whether they accept it or not, has been programmed by Western society. So even though Western society is losing its power over the rest of the world, it's still the ideas of Western society that are running it. And I'll give you an example. The Chinese society. So as you know, China is communist. And communists are our enemies. They're the mortal enemies of Christianity. They're the mortal enemies of capitalism. But what I learned, which I found really interesting from a Chinese shaman, not somebody I talked to, but it was somebody that was on the radio or something like that. And they were explaining to me that communism is a result of Christian missionaries. And I went, what? Like you're going, what? How is that possible? So this represents in a nutshell what has happened to the whole world, and what started with Western society in the age of Pisces under Roman empirical Christianity. So she explained that in Chinese society, not so much now, a little bit now, but it used to really be this way back in the 1800s and before. Chinese society was built upon ancestor worship. So whether they were Confucians or whether they were Taoists or Buddhists or whatever their traditional Chinese religion was, they were also they worshipped the ancestors, and so they spent a lot of time doing rituals to the ancestors and setting places next to them, and on the special days. And if a wind blew through the door, that was an ancestor coming, and you would, ancestor worship was really important. And then came the Christian missionaries who came in and said, and here's what was happening. What was happening at that time is that you had colonial capitalist Westerners, either from England or from America, and they were going around and doing their things, and China wanted to be part of the modern world, so they were watching what these colonial Westerners were doing, and they were adopting Western society and Western mannerisms, and they were learning about Western business, and they wanted to be a part of that. Understandably, they wanted to be a power in the world, and they wanted to make money. That was what you had to do back then. The West was technologically more advanced, so they needed to be a part of that. So along with these business leaders and these colonialists who were, making money hand over fist, the would-be elite of China were watching what they were doing, and along with these Western colonial business leaders came the Western Christian missionaries, hand in hand. You couldn't have one without the other. And so you'd have the missionaries running the school, and so the parents would send the kids off to the Western schools and all of that. And they would be forbidden to do all kinds of things, and they would be taught that you were a heathen, you were a pagan, you were a barbarian if you worshipped ancestors, because that's what our barbarian ancestors did too. And we look back at our ancestors as being barbarian, pagan heathens. We just spread that disease to China. So what ended up happening is that the elite started slowly and surely started cutting themselves off from their shamanic ancestor worship past. Now, what was the result of that? You'd think, well, why didn't they become Christian? What ended up happening is, and this is important to understand, maybe I can explain it. It's a huge, huge chunk that I wish I could download to you, but maybe I can explain it. But what started to happen was that the teaching of that wasn't how to become more spiritual. The underlying message of that is your shamanic spiritual practices are evil, and they won't make you any money because you will be a barbarian. By the way, the word pagan and heathen have the same meanings. So that's why I do not, even though I'm a polytheist, I do not identify as a pagan or heathen, because that is exactly what first the Roman Empire did. People who didn't become Christians were country bumpkins. They were uneducated country folk, and the country people were pagans. They lived out in the country. So a pagan was somebody who hadn't been educated and was still living in the past and had not converted to Christianity. That's what paganism means. It means uneducated idiot. Same thing with heathen. The heath is out in the country. And so as Roman Christianity was taking over in England, the people in the city centers, who were the educated ones, they became Christians, and those heathens, the ones on the heath, those idiots out there, they're still, praying to Thor or whatever it is. It's not a compliment. And it's interesting to me that people who love those words are the people who are the least educated, the most violent, and the most racist, even though they are embracing polytheism. Sorry for those if I've hurt your feelings, but that's just the reality of it. That's why I do not ascribe to that. Not only because I don't like the vibration of those names, but I also don't like a lot of the political correctness within those pagan and heathen understandings. People are not educating themselves on multiple levels. So that's why I don't do it. I don't know how I got onto that, but anyway. So bottom line is that the Chinese people, those who were wanting to emulate the Westerners, were being told that their shamanic practices were barbaric and primitive. And they didn't want to be primitive, they wanted to be successful. So they started moving away from that. And the message of that was it desacralized their lives. It didn't empower them spiritually, because as you can see, China didn't become a huge Christian nation. They didn't care about that. The Chinese people are very practical. The Chinese language is a very practical language. It's, Western language is very poetic. Chinese is very practical, so they think very practically. And so they're coming along and they're getting the message that, oh, I don't want to be a primitive person, so I'm going to get rid of superstition, which means spirituality. I'm going to get rid of the sacredness of the earth. And if you go there now, I was just watching this on TV now, and somebody was talking about how in China they treat animals very differently. They treat them as things. They don't treat them as beings that have, we're talking about the average Chinese person, not everybody. But, in the cities, they just treat them like these, that's why they eat certain kinds of animals that we don't eat. And it goes back to this, desacralizing, taking the spirituality out of our lives. And so what is the logical conclusion of that? The logical conclusion of that is that there is no God, and therefore communism, and that's where communism came from. Communism is a reaction. It's not an evolution. It is a reaction to foreigners coming in and putting materialism in front of them and then saying, get rid of all your spirituality and you can become materially prosperous. And so when you have this vacancy of no religion, you have to fill it with something. And so the religion is atheism. Atheism and, mindless, whatever. That is the result of Christianity. And the thing about this kind of disease is that every time it replicates, it is a more potent form than the previous one. So I'll walk you through it. I'm going to blow your mind. Hopefully, if you can follow me with this, I'm going to blow your mind. Let's start with the Greeks. The Greeks are Indo-Europeans. They speak a language very similar to the one I'm speaking now. In fact, English is in fact a form of Indo-European, and so is Greek and Latin and Sanskrit and Germanic and Celtic and Slavic. They're all different dialects of the same language. So they had the same religion, Zeus, Tiu. It's the same religion. Deus Pita. It's all the same religion. And they were tribal people who lived in tribal communities. And so what ended up happening is that you had people, over time who started becoming these kings, these regional kings who started getting more and more power. And then what ends up happening is that they started creating empires. The whole idea of Western empires started in Greece, even though it was happening in other places around the world. Western empires started in Greece. And so what we look at as the golden age of Greece, which is the age of the Grecian Empire, is, even though there were different city-states, they were still empires. They thought like empires. And here's how the empire works. You have these people who live in direct connection to Mother Earth. They have farms and they, have animals and they, they're the seasons. They're connected to nature. They can't eat more than what the ground will give them. They can't have more people than what their immediate surroundings will sustain. So what they would do is they learned how to farm, and instead of just, being hunter-gatherers, they started having farms. And on these farms, they started having grain, and then they learned how to have a lot of grain. And so you had to put all this grain somewhere. It was more grain that you could use. You couldn't eat all of it, so you had to put it somewhere. So they started creating grain silos, and they put all the grain in silos. But then other communities around there are like, why the hell should we go out and gather when these guys got all this grain over in these silos? And so you had people stealing your grain, and so then they had to have an army to sit around and guard the grains. And then you didn't have people working the fields because they were guarding the grains. So then you had to go conquer people with that army and then use them to farm for you. And then you had to build a city to protect the elite. to protect the grain and the elite and the people. So they'd sit up in their towers and they'd look down over the fields and all of that, the people they'd just conquered. And then it just expands out from there. And then you have this society of people who live in the city. And they have nothing to do. So they think all day. And they come up with philosophy. Now, I'm a philosopher. I love philosophy. But that is why you had Greeks with all these different philosophical things that, you know, what is the goodness of the state and the man and the soul and the boy? What do you do with that knowledge? Nothing. And so this creates the idea of the philosopher king who sits in his giant palace and he does nothing but send out people and conquer lands and then take their resources. And this is the mindset that's spread all over the world. Now, why does Greece have anything to do with what I'm saying now? When you went to college, when I went to college, when I went to high school, I learned Western civilization. What is the first thing they taught you? They taught you about the Greeks and Greek society. And then you talk about people who say the Greek society, the roots of our civilization. None of that is true if you live in Ireland or Wales or Scandinavia. There's no roots to that society that starts in Greece. Unless, of course, you're talking about during the Middle Ages, the age of Pisces, where this Greek mentality has taken over the whole world through the Romans. And then you have serfdom. And what happens when Europe reaches its capacity and the whole of Europe becomes this giant serfdom kingdom and there's nothing more to conquer? What do? They find the new world and they send a bunch of people over there and they need people to do that. So what do? They go down into first they can't, for some reason, they can't seem to make slaves out of the Native Americans. And the Christian church was still trying to figure out, are Native Americans people? Because if they're people, they have a soul. And if they have a soul, then we can't enslave them. Right? And any racists out there, it's coming from the very people who you say you are fighting against. The elites who you are trying to gain freedom from, that is the mindset that creates slavery. So you can't believe in freedom and at the same time promote the mindset of slavery. You can't have both. Sorry, I got a little hot under the collar there. I'm just really, I have a really hard time channeling what is so clear to me. And people's, a lot of people in this world want to stay stupid. Because if you get smart, you'll have to be responsible for yourself. And you don't want to be responsible for yourself. You want to talk about being responsible for yourself. But when it comes down to it, you want to blame other people. And yet you want to have somebody else give you a job. You want to be controlled, but you want to act like you're independent. You can't have both. So pick one. Pick one. You're either a slave or you're free. And if you're free, you have no business running around trying to exclude or enslave others. And if you can't see that, I am very sorry for you. Anyway, this is the Age of Aquarius. So what is the first thing that we're taught when we go to school? We're taught that society, that European society started with the golden age of Greece. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. Unless we're talking about civilization. In that case, you're right. It started with the Greeks. But what is civilization except for this imperial mindset of those who have and those who don't? That's it. We're moving out of that. That is why people are having these spontaneous experiences of being visited by the gods of their ancestors. And I could go into all of that, why that's happening, and that's a whole other subject. But point being is that we are traveling through the universe and we are coming back to an actual physical space within the universe where we passed through coming, to the Dark Ages. We came this way, coming for, and we hit the Dark Ages, which was the age of Pisces. by the way, the age of Kali Yuga, the age of the Dark Ages, was the age of Pisces, and the Christianity, the middle of it. The Middle Ages was the darkest age of the age of Kali Yuga. And then we started turning around and we started moving back towards the galactic center. Our solar system has now been moving back, and it's beginning to hit the space where our tribal polytheist ancestors lived, and that's why we are having the shift of people having these spontaneous experiences of seeing Odin and Thor and all these other polytheist deities of their ancestors, because we're actually moving through the space. And that's why the Christians are getting so violent and they're getting so divisive, and that is why politically people are straight down the middle. That's why there's no middle ground anymore. You're either a leftist or, you know, you're whatever, a fascist. Those are the only choices that you have now. And you know, being in the middle is very difficult to do. I try to do it. I try to straddle the middle, you know. But you know, I get a lot of people calling me all kinds of nasty names. But anyway, so this is the shift. This is why you're coming apart. This is why it's happening. Because you're coming out of this stage of living in the mindset of a slave, or the mindset of the imperial conqueror, one of the other, and you're moving into this actual physical space where the energy is shifting to where we are seeing ourselves as self-sufficient and part of a community. And we also are moving into a phase where, like our hunter-gatherer ancestors, they never had more than what they needed. In fact, that was ridiculous to them. The idea of storing grain, the idea of having entire like huge supermarkets filled with meat meant no sense to them, because they lived with what nature provided for them. This is why it was an unnatural thing to start farming and hoarding the grain and having massive plantations full of, you know, thousands of cows. You can't eat that many cows at one time. You can't do it. It's an unnatural thing. What was natural was to eat what was provided to you, and that means that you have to trust the universe. You have to trust Mother Earth. That's why I teach people to trust, because if you trust, you'll be given what you need. You don't have to store it. It'll come to you. But if you don't trust, then you know you can't have that relationship with Mother Earth or the universe, period. You can't do it. And this is where this is why Christianity brought with it this idea that the earth was evil, and this whole idea of the devil and earthly and fleshly, that things of the earth, things of the material existence were evil. And it created this schism, and that's why people were constantly waiting to go to heaven, because this earth was just this place of torture. Well, because they weren't connected. They didn't trust Mother Earth. And to do so, you could get, for me to say that in the Middle Ages, to trust Mother Earth, they'd flay me alive. I probably did at some point. Probably did you too at some point. And so you carry this guilt within you, this shame, this self-hatred, that not only you've been taught your entire life so that you could be part of the mindless zombies, and or you carry with you multiple lifetimes of being taught that. So we have unconscious past life, self-hatred and shame connected to loving ourselves, loving Mother Earth, loving each other, and being tolerant. My God, why is that so difficult for people to understand? Multiculturalism is a bad thing. Why? Just so fucking what? Are you that weak? Are you that weak that you can't tolerate somebody who has a different culture? Really? You're that brittle. You're that frail. What a pussy. Man, grow some nuts. Seriously. Get a nutsack under there. Let people be whoever the hell they are. It's just, they're still you. You can't see that? I'm so proud of my ancestral heritage. I'd like to believe I'm prouder than you are, because I am not threatened by anybody's ancestry. Bring it on. I'll learn from anybody. If it'll help me, I'll my ancestors were the same. Because if they weren't, then the Middle East wouldn't be what it is. Russia wouldn't be what it is. My ancestors colonized all these areas, and they were more than happy to allow their culture to shift and to change and to become immersed into that culture. Those are people who are comfortable with themselves, very practical and comfortable with themselves. Anyway, I sort of went off on that. Anyway, so I hope that you can see where this is going. The reason why you are coming apart at the seams, and the reason why you are depressed, the reason why you are afraid, the reason why that you can't handle your feelings is because 2,000 years ago, our ancestors, out of a need to fit in or survive, chose to move away from their ancestral connection to the earth and to Father Sky, Mother Earth, to the gods and to the ancestors, and to live in harmony with their natural environment. They chose to abandon that either to survive or to be accepted, or they were infected with greed. And I'll shut up with this. I said something earlier which is important, which is that each time that this disease replicates itself, it is a worse form than it was before. So you started out with the Greeks. Now the Greeks weren't an empire like the Roman Empire. They were city-states. So they were sort of like this democratic, pseudo-democratic, because wasn't really democratic. There were these, this federation, this republic of city-states that worked within each other, but they still conquered other people and took their lands. That started, and then, they had started and did that over in Rome and near like Italy and Rome said, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do what they did, but we'll do it better. And then they created the Roman Empire, which was much more expansive and much more strict and much more militaristic. And then you had the Romans who went into Europe, and they brought with them their empire into Europe. And what ended up happening is that they conquered and enslaved those those Germanic warriors, who then, and I go into this when I talk about the fall of Rome, and I won't take the time to do it today, but you had these people who had been conquered for 400 years, enslaved for 400 years, who desperately wanted to be part of the Roman Empire. And they sat outside, they camped outside the Roman Empire, and the Romans took them in because they were also running away from the Huns who were decimating them. They couldn't fight that kind of warfare. So the Romans took them in and enslaved them. And they tried to get out of that enslavement, and they went from big, thousands and thousands of these Germanic, migrants now going around Rome. Again, those of you who want to bag on migrants, your ancestors who conquered Rome were migrants. They were homeless migrants looking for a place to live in safety. And if you can't look at anybody else who's coming in saying, I'm coming out of a place of horror and war and I need a safe place to live, if you can't look them in the eye and say, welcome, then you are not my brother and sister. I don't care what ethnicity you are. I want nothing to do with you. You disgust me. It is so against our ancestral heritage to be like that towards other people. It infuriates me like nothing. And if you can't see that, I am either very sad for you or, that's the best thing I can do is be sad for you, that you are that unaware of how your ancestors believed in generosity. It was against spiritual law to refuse somebody who came to your door in need. It was against the law. Odin looked down on you with disrespect if you didn't do that. So for you to say that you love Odin and at the same time say that you hate a foreigner who's looking for a safe place to live and you're afraid they're going to do something to you, you are not an Odinic warrior. Period. End of discussion. And you don't have to like it. Go read the Havamal if you don't like it. Sorry, I got a little hot under the collar, but anyway, there you go. This is why you're coming apart. This is why it's so tough, because we're actually moving. Our Earth is moving into a section of space where the mindset is still there. The vibrations of our ancestors over 2,000 years ago is still there. And our minds are trying to connect. And those of you who are holding on to the old Piscean ideas of separation, exclusion, domination, conquering and control, of racism and slavery, of bigotry, if you have any of that within you, you are a Christian, regardless of whether you believe in Jesus or not. And you are holding on to an old idea. And that's why you're so afraid of everything you don't understand. And for those of you that are trying to make the shift, that's why you're coming apart. That's why you're feeling the sadness and the shame. It is of multiple generations. It is of multiple past lifetimes. And it is in your DNA. Because if you, especially if you're a Northern European, you are descended from people who split themselves off from their sacred connection to Mother Earth. And that disease began to grow, and it created racism and bigotry and violence of nuclear bombs. That is the result. That's why nuclear bombs were invented in the West. That's why it happened there, and that's why we were the first to use it. And so that's why every time you conquer somebody and you take their shamanic spiritual heritage away from them, when those people adopt your understanding, they become even sicker than you. And then that's why Rome became the Holy Roman Empire later on, is because it wasn't the Romans that were ruling the world then, it was those Germanic slaves who had taken over Rome, and they didn't take over Rome and turn it into a Germanic, shamanic, polytheist society. They adopted Roman Christianity and Roman culture, and they overcompensated out of their own self-hatred and shame. Then they went and spread that over the rest of Europe, and then they spread that to the New World. And then they spread it to China. Can you make the connection? Do you see the connection? Because when I look at it, it devastates me. And it's very saddening to me. I want to get angry, but there's nobody getting angry at. We did it to ourselves. The Hopis were right. We did it to ourselves. Nobody did it to us. And if you say you're proud of your ethnicity and you're not man enough to own the mistakes of your ancestors, then you have no nutsack, in my opinion. I am very proud of who I am, and I am more than willing to look at the mistakes that my ancestors did, and I am more than willing to look at in shame over the ways that they escaped our ancestral connection. Anyway, so I'm gonna shut up for a little while. I'll take a little bit of break, see if I can pull myself together and answer any more questions that you have. Be right back. Okay, we're back. Let's see if I can pull myself up off of the apple cart and come down off of my high horse here for a moment and answer some questions. Okay, so I see a question here. Killing Munch says, question, I saw an ad for a week-long ayahuasca retreat to realign people with their soul and purge what no longer served them. Is that simple? Or do you mean, is it that simple, or is it just a marketing ploy? I don't know if it's a marketing ploy. I don't know that it's either or. I don't know the people who are doing it. I don't know their experience, and I don't know their, I don't know anything about them, so I'm not going to make any judgments about them. My personal opinion is I do not think that ayahuasca is a good, I don't think it's a healthy way to do that. And, I know that a lot of people think that shamanism is about ayahuasca or, power plants. And that is a very recent thing. In fact, I won't get into that. But, without stepping on as many toes as possible, the Vedics and the Taoists both used to use power plants similar to ayahuasca, and they stopped doing it thousands of years ago. And the reason why they did it is because they learned how to do it without having an external chemical do it to them. I will go so far as to say that ayahuasca done in its original context with indigenous people who lived without any influence from the West and grew up in that, they are equipped to benefit from ayahuasca. Westerners are not. Westerners are broken. Westerners do not understand, and I don't care how much training you have. And, everybody's different, but I've watched a lot of people and I've followed people who did it, and my end result is that Westerners are not equipped to handle ayahuasca. Bottom line is that ayahuasca blows your circuits wide open energetically. That's why you have an experience. You do that in the context of a shaman who protects you. That's what the singing is all about. A real shaman won't just take anybody indiscriminately. Here, pay me this and come for a week. They won't do that. They will either say, you do it and we'll do it in 2 months, and you pray and I'm going to pray, and you blah, and they protect themselves and they know what it means and they can handle it because they're able to. But Westerners are empty. They're broken. They're disconnected. They need a fix. And that's why they think if I go to for a week, I remember following some girl on YouTube who was doing this because I wanted to see what would happen. I wanted to learn before I made more judgments. I know that it's wrong for me, but I wanted to follow her. And she went because she had a physical disease, and she wanted to find out, I'm fully behind this, she wanted to find out the unconscious emotional reasons behind it, and she had all these experiences. And after going 25 times, having 25 ayahuasca experiences, she was still sick. So all of her experiences did nothing to heal her. And this is the problem with the Western mentality. So I don't think it's the right thing to do. I personally don't think it's that simple. I'm not saying that those people, that it's just a marketing ploy. I don't know them. They might be very sincere, and there might be some qualified shamans who know what they're doing. I can't say. I personally say that for a Westerner to go and come back, I don't think it's the best thing for them. I think that what you ought to do is face what I'm talking about. Face what's broken within you, and get the same benefits. Because if you want to release the DMT and the dopamine and everything else, you can do it naturally with qigong, with yoga. If you have a right teacher who teaches you a powerful tradition. So I would say do that. I would say go and practice real shamanism every day. Go on to thunderwizard.com and start from the beginning and learn how to create the universe and how to heal yourself. Heal all the 9 worlds. And still have your feelings and have your pain. Don't use it as a way to fix yourself or run away from your pain. It won't work, and it might even damage you. And there are a lot of people who have taken ayahuasca and other power plants who have been permanently damaged, like insane. So I don't think it's the best way to go. That's my feeling on that. Like it or don't like it, that's my opinion. Question, what does it mean when rune symbols show in elements such as clouds and trees and people's shadows? Well, it means that the runes are in the fabric of the universe, and it means that they are communicating with you. This is why I would need to talk to you. So to give you the specifics, I need to talk to you, ask you some questions. So go to career.thunderwizard.com and have get a session with me, and if you want, we can go over that. Mystical Times question, what is the best way to tap into the ancient wisdom for guiding on decision making? The best way to tap into the ancient wisdom? It's a huge question. I would need to know you. Again, get a reading from me. That'll help me figure out how you need to tap into which planet and which deity to make the best decision. Having said that, the simplest thing to do is to ask yourself what you really want. You can get my book, The Wealth Shaman, or you can get my book, The Secret Shamanic Commandment to a Perfect Life. If you want to see all my books, go to michaelwilliamdenny.com. But the bottom line is follow your soul. If you don't know what your soul wants you to do, that's why you got to talk to me. I can't, without talking to you, I can't give you more specific advice than that. Question, Free Willy, what are your thoughts on savings account as they relate? I have a savings account. That's because I can't spend it all. So if you have more money than you can spend, put it in a savings account. That's my thoughts on savings account. Let's see, what else? Where are we going here? Swastika was given to me in a vision for opening the heart of a beast instead of killing it. Okay, that's not a question, sorry. Sounds interesting, but it wasn't. Emerson's Coffee Bike and Rum Shop, thank you for the $5. She on Super Chat, she says, Guruji, you are dear to me. I need the mother's milk of wisdom. I'm back, even if it means more salty, bitter medicine. Okay. Let's see, what else? All right, so people are commenting on me going on a rant about and almost losing my shorts here. As you can see, I have some really deep, strong feelings about a lot of this stuff, and I carry it around with me, and I work really hard to find ways to constructively use it. You know, just launching attacks on people doesn't help. It doesn't help me when people do it. I try not to do it to other people. And I try to understand that, you know, even those that I believe are mistaken, you know, if they're able to get past their ego and past their fear, you know, they have the same feelings as me. And they can get there. You know, I'll share an interesting story since I've unleashed so much. I don't remember where I saw it. Read it. I think I read it somewhere. The KKK was grooming a young man, like a teenager, like a boy. There was some boy who was the son of the Grand Dragon whatever, and they were grooming him from birth to become the next leader of the KKK. But they made a fatal mistake. They sent him off to college. And he got an education. Oh my God. And he spent time with people who were of African descent and of Jewish descent. And amazingly, without being told by other people, he found out they were just like him. What a shock. And now, as I understand it, he is an activist for equal rights. I'm a big believer in education, even though there's a lot of problems with, you know, and limitations to it. But education is important. You know, even if you just educate yourself. I'm very self-educated. I have, you know, the equivalent of 2 bachelor's degrees. But, you know, because I learned how to do things in college and study and learn to actually research. By the way, research does not mean watching a bunch of videos that all tell you what you want to hear. That is not research. So the flat earthers out there that want to keep telling me that I need to do my research, I have done my research, and your science is garbage. Research means you look at both sides. I did this with 9/11. I would be the first one to buy into the 9/11 truther. I did for a while, and I am on an emotional level. I have an agenda about that. I would love to be a 9/11 truther. And I was, because I was watching all of these videos that talked with experts who were saying, this is how this happened and this couldn't have happened. And I stopped myself and I said, hang on, I'm only watching videos that are telling me one side of the story. So I simply typed in 9/11 truther debunked, and I only found a couple of videos of experts who then explained to me why it actually was possible that things happened exactly the way we were told they were. That's research. When you're willing to learn truths that don't necessarily go with your emotional agenda. When you're willing to look at both sides. And it doesn't matter the mountain of videos that tell you the same thing. That doesn't make it true. So this is what education will give you. It tells you how to do things like think critically and learn how to research. It tells you how to know the difference. Education can be a very important tool. Don't frown on it. And if you haven't got one, go out and educate yourself. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to educate people in the best way I can. So let's see. What else did I say here? Okay. Nokta-sama, it's good if you let me know you have a question by putting question in the beginning. I almost passed you by. I think I have a fear virus. I feel like I'm in a loop of helplessness. How do I get out of fear? Again, how can I give you one answer in 10 seconds? This is going to be a process. You're going to need help. Watch all of my videos and work with me if you can. Go to thundershamanism.com, and if you can, work with me personally. I'm going to have to start teaching people how to counsel in my shamanic path so that we can actually help people through it. But the easiest thing I can tell you is, well, what's coming to mind is get a reading from me, get an astrological reading. That will help me give you some practical tools like a mantra and which planets and deities and how you need to interface with your own unconscious so that you can heal yourself. That's the first thing I would say. Second thing I would say is start working with me if you can. Go to thunderwizard.com and sign up and start working with me. Other than that, talk to somebody, get some help. The easiest thing I can say is that listen to your soul. You know, when you don't know, when you're in pain or you're in fear, stop and say, what is it that I really want? If you don't know how to do that, then go into fantasy land and say, in a fantasy world where I don't have to make money and I don't have to please anybody, and the only thing I'm required to do is have as much fun as possible, and I don't need money to do it, what is it that I want to do? And then go do that thing. For me, it's surfing. My whole life is based around it. Everything I do is so that I can afford to live where I live now so I can surf 24/7 if that's what I want to do. So go find out what you want. Question, Lady Red. I want to make runes to sell. What is the best material? Stone, wood, glass? That's up to you. I don't have an issue one way or another. Follow your instincts. You know, let that be a relationship with you and that element. If whatever you have the most fun working with, one or all of them, do anything and everything you want and just follow what gives you joy. I like all of them. Lady Red, okay, no. So question, is herbal medicine a part of shamanism? Yes. I am not a master of herbal medicine, so I can't help you with that. All right, I am needing to get off here pretty quick because I've got things I got to do. So I'll take a short break, come back, and see if there are any more questions and finish things up. Talk to you guys in a second. Okay, so one of the things that I want to drive home to you is that the challenging, life-threatening issues that you're going through are a direct result of this shift. And what you are afraid of, if you have fear, and it's okay with me if you do. You know, what I wanted to say was that, you know, I'm not unaware of why people become racist. I get it. I've had those feelings where I'm afraid of things and people that I don't understand. I get that. It's not that it's an impossible thing to understand. It's sad to see somebody that disempowered and that afraid. But it's okay with me for you to be afraid. I talk about acting in fearlessness, but I've never said that you have to be fearless. If I have, I've misspoke, and I meant act fearless. And I don't mean in denial, pretend you're fearless. That's what guys do who run around with knives and guns and have to shoot things up. Those are guys who, you know, who are extremely afraid. And I remember one guy, this was a racist guy, he was talking about, you know, I don't remember where it was, but he outed himself without realizing it. And he was very honest, and for that I take my hat off to him. He said, I'm around these people who walk around and they wear different clothes and they do different things and they talk in languages that I don't understand. And I don't like that. And that's as simple as it is. It's just he doesn't get it. He doesn't feel he's a part of, and it frightens him. What he can't personally connect to and relate to, he thinks something is going to harm him. It's just that simple. He's afraid of what he doesn't understand. Now, if you come to me and you say, I am afraid, I can accept that. If you come to me and you say, I am angry, I can accept that. If you can come to me and say that you're miserable, I don't care what the emotion is, I can accept that, and I can love you in it, in fact. I will take my hat off and I will thank you for the bravery of being able to tell me what your feelings are. So having all of your feelings does not make you a victim. You're a victim when you start pointing fingers at those people there and those people there and the government and the aliens and the devil and all these people are doing it to me and I live on a flat earth and the archons are sucking the life out of my soul and you're such a victim because other people are doing it to you, then I'm going to give you a hard time because then you're full of shit. You're in total denial of your fear, your anger, and your depression. And the only way that you can heal from all of those feelings is to first take a fearless act. And that fearless act is to trust the universe loves you. Anybody who's a racist, anybody who believes in any kind of spiritual bigotry like Christianity, and if you don't believe this, you'll go to hell. Anybody who believes in hell does not believe the universe loves them. In fact, Christianity is very clear about it. Says that you're born in sin and that God hates you, and simply because you were born, you have to go to hell and God has to punish you. He's not going to put your life out. He's not going to kill you. He's going to punish you eternally simply because you exist. And Christians know that they hate themselves, that you know, they can't love themselves until God loves them. So that's where all this shit comes from. So in order to be fearless, the first thing you have to do is to say, you know what, I don't need to do anything to get the universe to love me. And if the universe loves me, it's okay, whatever feelings I have. And to start from there. Now that may be so painful for you that you feel like you're going to go out of your mind and maybe you will go insane. That's why you need people. That's why you need to talk to somebody. That's why I can't give you some pablum. Just do this, say this, and do this, and it'll all be okay. I can't do that. I want to. If I could, I'd be a billionaire. If I could let myself do it, I could totally milk that. And I could be a cult leader and I could be a billionaire. It'd be the easiest thing to do. But I can't do that to you. So I don't want anybody doing that to me. And because if I want to live in integrity of my soul and have as much fun as I'm having, then I have to be real with you. And so that means if you come to me and you want to work with me, especially if you want to learn some of the deep secret stuff, then we're going to have a talk about, you're going to go through some really radical personal transformation that's going to be really frightening and scary, and you're going to come out of your skin. And I don't care how much self-knowledge you think you have, you're going to come apart. And that's okay. And that's what I'm here for. And that's what shamans do. I'll stop with this. Shamans are called, a shaman is called, traditionally speaking, when they have a near-death experience and or they have an out-of-body experience. And I'm not just talking about smoking weed or doing ayahuasca and having a trip. That's not what I'm talking about. Or they have a vision or a dream that they get chopped into pieces and pulled apart. One is you get chopped into pieces and then the ancestors put all of your pieces back into a pot and boil it and stir it around and then pull you out again. I heard one from one of my students who said that she had a dream that ants pulled her apart. So those are just symbols, but some of you really are getting pulled apart emotionally. And as painful as horrible as it is, it means that the universe is trying to heal you of your false understandings that came with the age of Pisces. And in order to be a part of the age of Aquarius, you're going to have to be put back together again. Whether that happens in a vision or whether that happens with me talking to you and holding your hand while you come apart. And just telling you, have your feelings and let's work this out. However it happens, it's still a shamanic calling. And the age of Aquarius is being complete within yourself. You don't need anybody else, but you want to be with other people. This is what the age of Aquarius is. Okay, so with that I'm going to shut up. I'll check and see if there are any answers. I do have to get off because I got stuff I got to do. I'll see if there are any questions. Did I say answers? I'll see if there are any questions, and if I can answer them, I will. Maclovia Padilla question. This last full moon I did a ceremony in the thunder. Will, and also to speak with the elves. Let me just say, okay, there's no question there. I'm glad you had a good time. I don't see the question. All right. I don't see any questions, you guys. Am I missing something? Nope, no questions. All right, so that's it for me today. Astrology certification.thunderwizard.com if you want to be a certified astrologer working with me. Career.thunderwizard.com if you want to work with me personally, if you need a session. Thunderwizard.com if you want to learn my brand of shamanism from the ground up. $25 level will get you into all of that. I can't think of anything else. Whatever you're going through, guys, it's what you're supposed to go through. Just, as difficult and as painful as it is, listen to what your soul wants to do. Go after the things that bring you joy, even the little things. Again, surfing to me, if I were to tell myself that 30 years ago, I would have said, I don't have time for that silly stuff. I have to be a successful. And I wasted years of my life trying to become something. And, I should have been surfing the whole time. It's what gives me the ability to do what I do. It's my most healing thing I can do, and it's fun. So if you don't know how to have fun, learn to have fun again. Just enjoy yourself. Stop beating yourself up so much. Have all of your feelings, cry it out, be angry. It's okay with me, no matter what your feelings are, you can have them. And then find some help. 12-step groups are brilliant at it. Find a counselor or a spiritual advisor you trust, or work with me if you can. Those are my suggestions. Those are some of the most practical things that you can do. One of the easiest things you could do is get an astrological reading from me. That will at least give you a really practical tool, which is a ritual and a mantra that helps you align yourself with what your true desires are. And we talk about that in a session, and I show you how to do that. But I need to be able to see what your precise chart says, because everybody's different. It's a prescription, and I can't give the same prescription to everybody. Everybody is unique. You need your own special little thing. So, all right, that's all for me. Sometimes people come in with a nope, no more questions. All right, my friends, that's it. Thanks again. I look forward to our next. By the way, yes, I've been overwhelmed, so just have patience with me. If I haven't been able to get back to those of you who've got sessions with me, or if you're an apprentice, please feel free to email me or contact me. And I'm this close to getting myself organized, and I will have it very soon. So just be patient with me, and I appreciate everybody's support. So that's it for now. Talk to you guys soon.